Well, welcome back, folks, to the Sea Files. Been a little bit under the weather today. Just drained of energy, trying to get it back, the energy back. I got my black morning tea here, even though it's not morning. I had to give up coffee, just too hard on the stomach. But we are going to get into the book of Genesis, chapter 19 in this reading. I've just been watching some interesting theological debates and textual criticism debates on YouTube. But it's always, I guess, I'm just a geek when it comes to, I don't know what the proper word is these days for being fascinated with that stuff. But yeah, it's what I've been doing. Anyway, let's get on with this. And chapter 19 of Genesis is where we're landing now because we've done the first 18 chapters already. Is going to be a controversial one for the internet, for YouTube. I'm going to read it as it is and then just comment what I need to comment. Remember that this is in the Bible. We don't want the Bible. Oops. Okay. We don't want the Bible to be banned from YouTube, if at all possible. But this is one of those passages where they could have an issue because of their own. There might be some folks that have an implicit bias against what's about to be spoken of here. But let's read it and then we'll address that. Now, this is talking about Sodom. Sodom's depravity, Sodom and Gomorrah destroyed. Now, the two angels came to Sodom in the evening. Now, if you recall from chapter 18, two angels visited Abraham, and Abraham had a conversation with God because they told Abraham basically what they're going to go do. And they're going to go deal, they're going to bring judgment on Sodom. And so Abraham had a conversation with God in chapter 18 saying, Lord, if there are this many righteous in Sodom, will you abstain from destroying Sodom? And, this went back and forth for a while. And no matter how low he brought the number, I think he brought the number down to five or six. I can't remember. Anyway, um, first he says 50 righteous. And then he works his way down to 45, and then 40, and then 30. He keeps going down. And then he asks 20. And I think 20 was the last. Yeah, 20 was the last number. If there are 20 righteous in Sodom, will you abstain from destroying it? And the Lord says, yes. If there's 20 righteous in Sodom, I will abstain from destroying it. So the angels are now going off to Sodom to bring judgment on Sodom. And this is where we pick up in chapter 19. Now the two angels came to Sodom in the evening, and Lot was sitting in the gate of Sodom. When Lot saw them, he rose to meet them, and he bowed himself with his face toward the ground. And he said, Here now, my lords, please turn into your servant's house and spend the night and wash your feet. Then you may rise early and go on your way. And they said, No, but we will spend the night in the open square. They don't want to go into Lot's house. But he insisted strongly. Wonder why he was insisting strongly, because he didn't know they were angels. He knew what was going to happen because he understood. He knew that city. Of course, angels are spirit beings, but they can manifest a body for the purpose of visiting and doing judgment as God tells them to do judgment or to bring messages. Um, and he insisted strongly. So they turned into him and entered his house. And then he made them a feast and baked unleavened bread, and they ate. Now, before they lay down, the men of the city the men of Sodom, both old and young, all the people from every quarter surrounded the house. So Lot knew this was going to happen. And they called to Lot and said to him, "Where are the men who came to you tonight? Bring them out to us that we may know them carnally." They wouldn't have homosexual relations with them. Um, it's interesting. They had a network there in Sodom. Someone saw these two men. Hey, these guys, I don't think they're from around here. You know, if you ever get the picture of the southern sheriff that pulls you over and he says, you're not from around here, are you? Because he knows everybody in the county, right? Because it's such a rural county. Um, well, they knew who normally would be in Sodom and who would not. And they said, these two guys, we haven't seen them before. And so they wanted to know them in an intimate way. So Lot went out to them through the doorway, shut the door behind him, and said, "Please, my brethren, do not so wickedly." Now, do you think that might have set them off a little bit? What do you mean wickedly? What do you mean we're doing wickedly? I'm sure they did not like that statement by Lot. Lot said, "See now, I have two daughters who have not known a man. Please let me bring them out to you, and you may do to them as you wish. Only do nothing to these men, since this is the reason they have come under the shadow of my roof." Now, that's really confusing to our modern mind, especially our modern culture in the West, because that doesn't make any sense. Why would you sacrifice your two daughters for two strangers that just showed up in town? Um, it was the culture. And even today in the Middle East, there is a culture of if someone comes into your house or if you invite someone in that's new to your village or whatever it might be, you are really kind of responsible for them. I mean, there's a very, very strong sense of hospitality in the culture. It was obviously true here, the sense of hospitality that Lot had. Obviously, he got it from the culture he came from out of Canaan. When he and Abraham came out of Canaan, was a part of his culture. So he was acting in accordance to that culture. And you also have to remember at that time, because they had a lack of understanding, a lack of true revelation, which comes later on in Scripture, where women are highly regarded versus being lowly regarded as they are here. This is a low regard in this culture of women. Women were less than men because men, they were the ones that seeded and continued to carry the family name, but daughters didn't do that. Daughters carried a different name when they married. That was part of it, but there was more to it than that. So humankind was, as far as the spirituality, the understanding of God, the understanding of what God's standards are, really at this point in time, and this is before Moses even received the commandments off of the mountain, um, their understanding was not that keen. And so he had Lot really didn't understand. He had no idea that what he was doing was obviously wrong. Um, verse 9. And they said, "Stand back," they being the angels. Then they said, "This one came in to stay here." And he keeps, let's see, wait, let me make sure I have the day right. I'll just read it. And they said, "Stand back." Then they said, this one came in to stay here, and he keeps acting as a judge. Now we will deal worse with you than with them. So they're the ones who were saying to Lot, stand back, get out of our way. But since you want to interfere, we're going to deal with you worse than we would have done with them. So they pressed hard against the man Lot and came near to break down the door. This is a level of intense desire, sexual desire, that I mean, these men had no control over themselves. They were desperately wicked when it came to their desires sexually. And it's interesting, as depravity really permeates a society, it seems like the bottom of the barrel is always an obsession with sexuality, an obsession with sex. It is the bottom of the barrel of human existence. There's no sacredness to it. There's nothing um, that gives them a sense of this is a very sacred and spiritual act in the sexual act, the act of intercourse, just very animalistic. And man at his worst is sexually animalistic. Um, so they pressed hard against the man Lot and came near to break down the door. But the men reached out their hands and pulled Lot into the house with them and shut the door. The angels that went to bring judgment pulled him in. And they struck the men who were at the doorway of the house with blindness. What a wonderful metaphor. What a wonderful symbology of of their spiritual blindness to their own human depravity. Now they have physical blindness and they can't find. I mean, imagine this. They are pulsing with desire, just exploding through their body, and they cannot satisfy that desire. They've been struck with blindness. They are now becoming irrational and very debased, very animalistic, and they're just going nuts trying to meet that uh, sensual desire that is really just fully controlling their mind and their body. They're a slave to it. And they struck the men who were at the doorway of the house with blindness, both small and great, so that they became weary trying to find the door. Imagine being a slave to that degree of the desires that pulsate through your body. I don't know that a lot of human beings who have never considered spirituality really even understand this concept. But we'll read on. Then the men said to Lot, have you anyone else here? Son-in-law, your sons, your daughters, and whomever you have in the city. Take them out of this place. Get out, Lot, because it's about to go down. Sometimes you can't fix things. Sometimes you can't reform things. Sometimes you just have to get out of town and let God do his work. And that's what was happening here. For we will destroy this place because the outcry against them has grown great before the face of the Lord, and the Lord has sent us to destroy it. So Lot went out and spoke to his sons-in-law who had married his daughters and said, "Get up, get out of this place, for the Lord will destroy this city." But to his sons-in-law, he seemed to be joking. They didn't take Lot seriously. So that tells a lot about his character and how he raised his daughters, his sons, how he related to his sons-in-laws, his daughters-in-laws. It wasn't a good thing. They didn't take him very seriously. They didn't see him as a serious man or someone that if he says something like that, it should be listened to. And it's not always the person's fault. May not be Lot's fault. It might be just their attitude toward Lot. But most of the time, when you have a serious person that has exhibited a level of wisdom, you have a tendency to want to listen to that person more than others if you're not a fool. But this probably sounded so outrageous to them, so just out of place. I mean, I could almost hear them in the modern way of thinking if it were in our day. Oh, Lot, get out of here with your silly conspiracy theory. Are you kidding me? What's wrong with you, Lot? Go away. I mean, that's kind of the mentality we're getting here. Uh, so it says Lot, verse 14, Lot went out and spoke with the sons-in-law who had married his daughters and said, "Get up, get out of this place, for the Lord will destroy the city." But to his sons-in-laws, he seemed to be joking. When the morning dawned, the angels urged Lot. Hope that's not okay. The page is kind of partially blocking the computer, but doesn't seem to be bothering the screen there. When the morning dawned, the angels urged Lot to hurry, saying, "Arise, take your wife and your two daughters who are here, lest you be consumed in the punishment of the city." And while he lingered, the men took hold of his hand, his wife's hand, and the hands of his two daughters, the Lord being merciful to him. And they brought him out and set him outside the city. So it came to pass when they had brought them outside that he said, "Escape for your life. Do not look back, you nor stay anywhere in the plain." Oh, I'm sorry. He says, "Escape for your life. Do not look behind you, nor stay anywhere in the plain. Escape to the mountains, lest you be destroyed." Then Lot said to them, "Please, no, my lords, indeed now your servant has found favor in your sight, and you have increased your mercy, which you have shown me by saving my life. But I cannot escape to the mountains, lest some evil overtake me and I die." Come on, Lot, trust God for once in your life, right? But he doesn't. "See now, this city is near enough to flee to, and it is a little one. Please let me escape there. Is it not a little one? And my soul shall live. Please don't put me up in the mountains in the wilderness. Let me go to another city." Lot had a problem here. Um, he liked that city life. I mean, how could he have been comfortable? Because the Bible called Lot a righteous man. How could he have been so comfortable among all that evil? It's a puzzling thing, isn't it? But he wanted to be in this, where all the excitement was, right? Where all of the, where he would feel protected. The cities were places of protection because they had walls. You weren't left out in the open where robbers could get you, or marauding raiders could get you, or the elements, the weather could get you. You were more secure in the city. So his trust and his security was being in the city rather than just trusting God the way Abraham did when Abraham was just out there roaming the wilderness where all of those things could have happened. But he begs them, it's just a little city, and my soul shall live. And he said to him, see, I have favored you concerning this thing also, in that I will not overthrow this city for which you have spoken. So go ahead, go to that city. God had some grace with him, had patience with him, in that I will not overthrow the city for which you have spoken. Hurry, escape there, for I cannot do anything until you arrive there. Therefore, the name of the city was called Zoar. The sun had risen upon the earth when Lot entered Zoar. Then the Lord rained brimstone and fire on Sodom and Gomorrah from the Lord. Yeah, turn the pager. Out of the heavens, the sky. Now, how did he do that? I don't know. It could have been a volcano. Could have been something else we don't know. God could have just produced it in the sky if he wanted to and dropped it on them. I don't know exactly how that happened. Could have been a meteorite, for all we know. I don't know. But it dropped on top of Sodom. So he overthrew those cities, all the plain, all the inhabitants of the cities, and what grew on the ground. Boom, big explosion. There they go. They're gone. But his wife looked back behind him and she became a pillar of salt. Well, God did that. He told him, don't look back. Stop longing for all that wickedness. Stop longing to live among the wickedness in those cities. But his wife looked back. I imagine her family was back there. She had people she knew and probably loved back there as far as human love goes. And probably just her in her nature couldn't help herself but to look back and kind of mourn what was happening. And that was the end of her. You say it's cruel of God. No, that's the judgment of God. That's the righteousness of God. We are cruel. We are a cruel people in our treatment of God and many times in our treatment of each other. The problem is with us, not with God. Someone once asked, why doesn't God end wickedness in the earth? Well, because that would end us, because we also are wicked. And if God ended wickedness at this moment, 1 second later, none of us would exist because we're all wicked. And that's what we don't like to do is look in the mirror and see our own sin. And Abraham went early in the morning to the place where he had stood before the Lord. Then he looked toward Sodom and Gomorrah and toward all the land of the plain, and he saw, and behold, the smoke of the land which went up like the smoke of a furnace. And it came to pass when God destroyed the cities of the plain that God remembered Abraham and sent Lot out of the midst of the overthrow when he overthrew the cities which Lot had dwelt. Because of Abraham asking God, Lord, if there are this many in the city, will you destroy it? Because Abraham was concerned for Lot. Lot was Abraham's nephew. And that's why Abraham was asking God those things. So God remembered that and said, yeah, I'll have grace on Lot because Abraham had concern for him. The descendants of Lot. Now, this is, we're going to find out where some of these other folks that we read about in the Bible later on come from, one of them being the Ammonites and the Moabites and so forth. Then, now here, so we go from the sodomy to incest. So this chapter, I mean, it's just it's really outlining how man was, man has been wicked since the beginning, since the fall of Adam. So there's nothing unique about what's going on in the world today. It was around in Abraham's time. Then Lot went up out of Zoar and dwelt in the mountains. So he leaves the city that he requested to go to, and he goes up into the mountains, which is where God told him to go in the first place. So I'm wondering what happened in Zoar that Lot said, you know what? I don't think I want to stick around here any longer. What was going? Maybe he saw the wickedness in Zoar and went, "Oh my God! You know what? If I stay here, fire and brimstone's probably going to fall on my head too. I better get out of town." I mean, that's a good possibility of what he was thinking. Then Lot went up out of Zoar and dwelt in the mountains, and his two daughters were with him, for he was afraid to dwell in Zoar. There you go. And he and his two daughters dwelt in the cave. All right, now here's where you can see that Lot did not raise his children to be the kind of godly people they're supposed to be. Now, the firstborn said to the younger, "Our father is old, and there is no man on the earth to come in to us, as is the custom of all the earth. Come, let us make our father drink wine, and when we lie with him, that we may preserve the lineage of our father." They really didn't understand the parameters, I don't think. So they made their father drink wine that night, and the firstborn went in and lay with her father, and he did not know when she lay down or when she arose. It happened on the next day that the firstborn said to the younger, Indeed, I lay with my father last night. Let us make him drink wine tonight also. And you go in and lay with him, that we may preserve the lineage of our father. Then they made their father drink wine that night also, and the younger arose and lay with him, and he did not know when she lay down or when she arose. So that's where the Moabites, the older daughter, and the Ammonites, the younger daughter, came from. Thus, both the daughters of Lot were with child by their father. The firstborn bore a son and called his name Moab. He is the father of the Moabites to this day. And the younger, she also bore a son and called his name Ben-Ami, and he is the father of the people of Ammon to this day. The Moabites were wiped out eventually, um, and it's recorded in Scripture. And the Ammonites were defeated by David. Um, and it's right around the time that David committed his sin with Bathsheba. But Joab, the head general, if you will, of King David, was fighting against Ammonites, and eventually they took a city, the capital of Ammon, and took the Ammonites captive, and they became they would work and with steel and or not, well, iron and things, and they would make bricks, and that's what happened to the Ammonites. David was extending grace to the Ammonites at first, but the Ammonites did something that was not very gracious toward David, and so that caused that to happen. So I'm jumping way ahead, but it helps you understand a little bit about what happened. All right. So let's continue on. I'm at 29 minutes. We can't continue on. I'm at 29 minutes. So in the next reading we'll get into Proverbs from the last time that we're there and we had left off. So we're going to be doing Proverbs chapter 10 to start out in the next reading. So thank you for joining me for this one. I know that that's one of the controversial passages in the Bible because of the mentality of many people in our society today. But it's right there in the Bible, and we can't not just skip over it. It's there. It tells us about God, the mind of God, how He thinks about who we are and what we should be doing, and then it tells a little bit about us and how we act in our animalistic nature. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time here on the Sea Files.